happy holidays, happy New Year's. Hopefully everybody watching got to spend some quality time with their friends, their families, their loved ones, or just by themselves. There's nothing wrong with that. I know a lot of people were very excited to get rid of the 2023 year and just get into 2024. I know just esports space, my friends, a lot of people on social media just had a very kind of turbulent up and down 2023, and I'm excited as well for the 2024 year. And I think what better way to ring in the LCS 2024 year if not to talk about the new LCS spring season that's starting on January 20th. Specifically, that it's back onto the weekends, which is very exciting for me because I can actually catch the games live. I don't have to like sneak watching it at work or catch the VODs later on. I can just watch it on the weekends, set some time aside, and just enjoy the games. I know there's a lot of new players coming into the LCS. Although we lost 2 teams, a lot of new and returning players are coming in, a lot of imports, a lot of native talent as well. I'm very excited to kind of talk about all that. And the premise of this video, specifically, if you haven't read the title or you just clicked on it somehow, is that I'm going to be talking about my 5 players that are coming into the LCS that are the most underrated. Now, my definition of an underrated player kind of falls into a couple different criterias. First and foremost, kind of the public opinion about them and maybe the public perception of where they are as a player skill wise, right? A lot of players on this list, or some of the players on this list, you know, people have potentially seen them playing the LCS before and they kind of still have that image of that same player that's coming into the new year. Or some of these players played last year and they didn't really have that good of a showing, and so now the overall level for them is very low. Maybe not looking at them individually and kind of what their function was within the team or how they functioned within the team. That's one of the criteria. I think another criteria is kind of just looking at what they've done since they've entered the LCS or before they're going to enter this new season, right? For some of these players, they grinded a lot. They grinded the tier 2 scene, or they grinded solo queue, so on and so forth. And I think because of those results and because of them having to prove themselves again, I think a lot of these guys are going to perform better or above their expectations coming into the split. I think a lot of the players on this list, at least most of them, I think some people will have them bottom 2, bottom 3 within their role. And I think in reality, they'll probably be average, if not above average, right? And I think if you can perform above the expectations, or at least the public expectations for them, I think you're underrated. There's also a couple other things that I won't really get into, the other things I factor that I'll probably get into as I talk about each of these individual players in regards to why they're potentially underrated. But yeah, let's just get into the list. Now, the first player I have on this list is Shopify Rebellion's very own top laner, FakeGod. And I think the memory that a lot of individuals have of FakeGod was his stint with 100 Thieves, who at the time was replacing the best, or if not the second best top laner in Someday in 100 Thieves. And he kind of had like a rocky start. A lot of people were questioning the decision, and ultimately he just didn't really pan out the way a lot of people expected. He had really big shoes to fill and had very high expectations, and just unfortunately as a rookie could not meet them. And I don't think that's really all of his fault there. He was thrust into a very delicate situation with 100 Thieves. His next stint was with Dignitas, where through 2021, through the spring and the summer and all that, was kind of put on teams that weren't really built for success. I'm going to be quite honest, right? You had players like Dardoch, Saligo, Neo, Afromu. Most of those players don't even play in tier 1 LCS or tier 1 leagues anymore. His next stint again was with Dignitas with a different roster. It was XU, it was River, it was Blue, it was Neo. Blue and Neo don't even play in tier 1 LCS, right? Like, I think Biofrost is retired. Like this is, these rosters weren't the best. And I think why I have him as an underrated player, at least coming into this year, is that a lot of people didn't pay attention to FakeGod in his time within the NACL. At least most of the fans that aren't watching NACL, and they didn't really see what he accomplished there. He won both the spring and summer championships with 2 different teams. Spring, he won with Cloud9 Challengers. It was FakeGod, Tomio, Jimenez / Diplex, and you had Lost and Zazel on that roster. And then in the summer, he was picked up by Disguised Toast's team, Disguised Gaming, where he played with, again, Tomio, Young, Meech, Zazel, kind of a different roster, and still was able to win the NACL 2023 Summer Championship. So he's got 2 tier 2 championships under his belt. He's had some time to kind of play top lane, really develop, I think, as a player. I think thrusting somebody like FakeGod way back when in 2020 on 100 Thieves and replacing a player like Someday, that wasn't the environment for him to develop. That wasn't conducive enough for him to kind of fully get himself fleshed out as a player. I think his time in the NACL, specifically in 2023, where he really got to develop and really got to grow and wasn't under like a whole lot of scrutiny, at least, and wasn't under a ton of eyes, I think that's really helped him. And I think if you've watched this past 2023 year for him, he's definitely kind of evolved as a player, and he's not the same one that we saw on both 100 Thieves and Dignitas. And I think he's going to perform a lot higher than people expect. I think a lot of people have FakeGod as like a bottom 2, bottom 3 top laner, when I think he could easily contend for top 4. My second player on this list is Immortals support player Olleh, who ended up taking the 2023 competitive year off. His last competitive season was LCS 2022, both spring and summer with Golden Guardians. They actually ended up not placing that high. I believe 5th, 6th was their highest placing in LCS 2022 spring. And since then, he has been grinding support play in Korea. He actually ended up hitting rank 1 Korean challenger, which is very impressive. And I think for a player like Olleh, having the ability to hit rank 1 and still, you know, figuring out that you're a very good player will do wonders for his mental. I think the biggest knock for a player like Olleh is, how is his mental fortitude going to be if this Immortals roster, you know, doesn't win, you know, 3 games in a row? Let's say they lose like 0-2, 0-3, or let's say they have a bad couple weeks, right? How are they going to kind of bounce back? And how is Olleh as a player going to bounce back? I think this Immortals roster is very, very volatile. It's a very interesting roster because you have 2 import players in you know, Mask and Castle that everybody has varying different kinds of opinions on. Like, they could be really good. This one, only one of the imports is very good. I think Armeo as a jungler is very consistent and solid. Tactical, not coming off the best year last year, pairing up with Olleh, who I think is ready to prove himself and actually could be a very good player, especially with the support pool right now. I think, you know, Olleh could sneak in as a top 4 support, or easily could be one of the shining stars of this Immortals roster, despite, you know, potentially them doing really bad in the spring season. I genuinely think Olleh could be a very good player. I just want to see his form after hitting KR Challenger, after coming back, after taking a year off. I think a lot of people are underrating him right now. My third player on this list, we are heading back to Shopify Rebellion, and specifically we're talking about their jungler Bugi, who last year with TSM along with Insanity were 2 of the brighter spots of that roster in 2023. Mind you, a lot of people had this TSM 2023 roster worst team in the LCS, potentially like bottom 8 or 9th place team, and they shocked a lot of individuals, specifically in the summer split of 2023, ended up going 6th overall in the round robin. Yes, they ended up losing in the LCS playoffs to Dignitas 3-2 and actually ended up overall placing 7th, 8th. But I think Shopify Rebellion did a very good job identifying the 2 players from that last year's roster that you could still bring into the new split, into the new year, and kind of surrounding them with better pieces, right? FakeGod obviously talked about earlier this video. I think he's super underrated. I think he's going to be a very good top laner. I think replacing, you know, both Wild Turtle and Chime with Bvoy and Zazel, that's on paper an upgrade in my opinion. And I think Bugi, despite, you know, being what was on kind of like a budget roster last year, was able to bring out some very unique picks as a jungler. I remember the Nautilus. I think he had a bunch of Elise games. He played Nocturne, that kind of stuff. I think Bugi as a jungler still has some time to develop and still has some things to polish up. And I think realistically, if they didn't swap out Insanity and Ruby for that kind of split that they were trying to experiment with mid laners, and if they just kind of went with Insanity from the beginning, that TSM roster probably places a lot higher, and we may view Bugi in a different light into this 2024 split. So I think Bugi's super underrated. Jungle pool is very strong this split though, right? You've got Blabber, you've got River, you've got Inspired coming back, right? Contracts as well. Like, you know, a lot of strong junglers, but I think that 4th place, potentially 3rd best jungler spot could easily go to somebody like Bugi if he kind of just builds upon what he was really good at and shores up some of the weaknesses he had, and kind of just is allowed to build synergy with a mid laner for the duration of a whole split. The 4th player on my list is going to come from a team that I rated pretty damn low on my 2024 LCS spring tier list. It is 100 Thieves support player Eyla, who really had a solid 2023 year, right? I think the very impressive thing to me is that he looked very good on support on 2 different teams. Now, the knock against him, and I think the biggest argument that will be made against him as a player, is that on both FlyQuest and Evil Geniuses, he played with 2 very good AD carry players. Prince and Unforgiven at certain points throughout those respective splits looked like a top 2, if not number 1 AD carry at times for their role, right? I think Unforgiven was getting a whole bunch of praise along with JoJo on the LCS 2023 summer for EG. And then obviously Prince and Vikla looked insane on FlyQuest in spring. Granted, both of those teams maybe didn't perform to their expectations when it came to playoff time, but I'm not going to simply ignore the regular season performance that these teams had, and specifically Eyla had. And I think he's bound to get his flowers eventually. I just don't think he's not going to get it now because he just hasn't competed long enough. And I think a lot of people are underrating Eyla as a support, right? Because I think if you look at the support pool coming into 2024, you've got Vulcan, who can potentially return to form. He's on Cloud 9 or back on Cloud 9. I think a lot of people are really high on him and how he can kind of potentially look like one of the best supports in the LCS again. Obviously, you've got players like Huhi from Golden Guardians moving into NRG. We've lost Ignar, but I mean, we still have players like Core JJ, Zazel coming back. Support pool, I think after potentially Vulcan and Huhi is up for grabs. I think Eyla could easily fill in that number 3 slot, given the fact that we have players like Isles, players like Busio, players like Zazel coming in, you know, who a lot of question marks around. Even Olleh, somebody I talked about earlier in this video, could definitely be lower than Eyla. And I think Eyla as a support last year looked very good. I think he's still going to look pretty solid on this 100 Thieves roster, but I think he's got a harder job ahead of him because he's not on such a stacked roster this time. He's not on, you know, superstar players. He's got Sniper, he's got River, he's got Quid, he's got Meech. None of these names other than kind of River kind of excite you. I think Sniper as a rookie is exciting, but he's going to take some time to kind of adjust to the LCS season and LCS level of play. So it's a tough challenge for Eyla, but I think he can do it. And I think we're going to look at 100 Thieves Eyla this spring split and be like, oh, wow, he's actually looking pretty damn good despite the pieces around him. My final player on this list is an individual who was pretty heavily criticized when he was signed on to this roster, and a lot of people seem to be down on based on this player's last year's performance. I'm talking about FlyQuest mid laner Jensen, who, yeah, I agree, didn't have the best of years with Dignitas, right? Placed 10th in the spring, ended up only winning 1 playoff game in the summer, beating out TSM before getting 3-0'd by Golden Guardians. But I think the image that people have of Jensen is like this very expensive, high resource carry kind of player, where I think in this FlyQuest roster specifically, I talked about it in my spring tier list video, he doesn't have to be a high carry, high resource demanding kind of player, right? You've got Bwipo, you've got Inspired, you've got Masu. Those are the carries of FlyQuest. If Jensen can properly transition, in my opinion, into a more game manager slash like consistent, you know, mage player in the mid laner, doesn't really hard lose lane, doesn't have to hard win lane. If he can transition into that kind of player and kind of just be a role player within FlyQuest, the rest will kind of be set in motion, right? Bwipo, Inspired, and Masu are more than enough firepower for this FlyQuest roster to succeed, and Jensen's role is very clear. I think for that reason, I think a lot of people are underrating Jensen. They have this image that he needs to be this hard carry player. He needs to be on like the best champion, so on and so forth. But I don't think so. I think he's going to be a solid role player. I think he's going to transition into a more supportive style mid. And I think if he can do that, FlyQuest is going to be a top team in the LCS. And I think we're going to look at him in a different light as a mid laner this year. And I think we're going to kind of cast away and forget what we saw in Dignitas, and we're gonna like really understand this is the player that Jensen can be now, and I think he's gonna transition very well with this FlyQuest roster. Hey everybody, thanks for watching the video. I'm hoping you guys enjoyed the content. If you did, leave a like, comment, do all that jazz. I genuinely try to respond to every single comment I see because it's always interesting to see the other opinions of people that care about League of Legends esports as much as I do. Obviously, the best way to support me is to hit that subscribe button and hit the bell for notifications on my latest uploads. If you want to see more of me and my content, I stream on Twitch 5 days a week. The link will be in the description box below. If you are into short form content, I'm also on TikTok. We talk about LPL, LCK, LEC, all the stuff over there. We talk about roster moves. So if your jam is short form content, head over to TikTok, hit the follow button there. I'm also on Twitter. So all of that stuff will be in the description box below. But other than that, thanks for watching the video, and I hope to see you soon.